Joining us now on the Emerald Queen Casino Sportsbook Hotline, your new voice for Husky sports on SeattleSports.com. It's Huskies insider Christian Caple. Christian, how's it going?
It's going well, Stacey. How are you doing?
We are well. We're very excited to have you. And so that you guys know, you can now read Christian at SeattleSports.com, and also be sure to subscribe to his site on Montlake.com. You can get double the coverage now. Christian, we're really excited to have you on regularly to not just be able to read your stuff at On Montlake and SeattleSports.com, but to be able to talk to you about the Huskies, because there is so much to talk about when it comes to these programs. I'm going to start with just kind of what your season is going to look like right now. I mean, what's going on for you? So you're covering the Huskies for us, and what's next for the Huskies? Are you going to be out at spring ball soon?
Yeah, so their spring practice schedule is a little bit different this year than it has been. They had their first 3 practices on March 6th, 8th, and 10th, and then they're taking 2.5 weeks off for finals and for spring break, and they've resumed practices, so their next spring practice is March 29th, and then they'll finish up kind of on a regular schedule at the spring game on April 22nd. So I will be out at spring practices like usual. For folks who haven't followed me or kind of unfamiliar, I covered the Huskies for The Athletic for the last 4.5 years or so. I was kind of laid off out of the blue at the end of February. Started my own site on Substack on Montlake.com, as you mentioned, and having a lot of fun kind of going the independent route, setting my own agenda, and definitely continuing writing about the Huskies, and obviously thrilled to be doing that also now for you guys.
Well, we're glad that we got you, man. But I want to ask you about the transfer situation with UW. This is a new thing, right? When I was coming up, guys transferred, but you had to sit a year. There's a bunch of things you had to do. And it seems like universities are taking the portal and really revamping and rebuilding their programs for these guys that they're probably only going to have 1 to 2 years, and in the best case scenario, 3 years. What's the transfer situation looking like for UW, and do you see any names or guys that you feel like are going to be main contributors?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of last year, I think you could kind of tell, they've got their recruiting class, their 2023 guys, right, who they're after and are committed. But you could tell the positions where they were going to need some veteran help, where I think they benefited from it last year also. Running back, I think, was the most critical one, just getting some guys in who have played, some experience, some different skill sets. Dylan Johnson, a transfer from Mississippi State, played in the air raid there under Mike Leach. He'll be here for these last 12 spring practices when they get going here at the end of the month. I think he's going to compete to be that sort of lead back. Obviously, they've got Cam Davis back, who had a big year last year, sort of in the number 2 role, and he'll be battling for carries. And they added another transfer running back, Daniel Nagata from Arizona State, who was a guy that they recruited some out of high school. He's also sort of been in a number 2, number 3 back type of role there at ASU. But both those guys, Dylan Johnson and Daniel Nagata, can catch the ball. They've got receiver skills, and that's really what Ryan Grubb and Kalen DeBoer are kind of looking for at that position. They want that guy to, not just carry the ball between the tackles, but to be able to space the field and stretch the field and, give them another weapon in the passing game. So I think they're hoping those guys can bring that. They added Raylan Goforth, a senior linebacker from USC, who is going to compete. He'll obviously play a lot either way, but I think he'll compete for a starting job and bring some experience there, where they also added 2 seniors at that position last season, and those guys are gone now. So they were fortunate to go out and get another veteran there. I'm interested to see a guy like Zach Durfee, an edge rusher who had 11 sacks at University of Sioux Falls last year, strangely enough, where Kalen DeBoer kind of got his start. And so, he's, I think, off to an encouraging start for them in winter workouts. Jabbar Muhammad, another really important addition, a veteran, junior cornerback from Oklahoma State, who's played a ton of football and had a good season for them last year. They needed some help. Could have really used him last season, probably had a lot of injuries and a lot of youth in the secondary. So those are kind of the guys I'm looking forward to see, sort of how they integrate into the team this spring.
All right, if you're just now joining us, we've just announced that we are expanding our coverage at seattlesports.com. We've always covered the Huskies, but now we're going even deeper. We've got Huskies insider Christian Caple, formerly with The Athletic. He's also covered the Cougs for the Spokesman Review, UW for the News Tribune, and again, most recently with The Athletic. But you can read his work at On Montlake. Make sure you go subscribe to his site. And then also at seattlesports.com, follow him at Christian Caple. So all you college sports fans, and especially Dogs fans, you now have a go-to source for a lot of this. Seattlesports.com, Christian Caple, also on montlake.com. Christian, the Huskies are in this really interesting spot where you have this opportunity to cover a team that has a chance to have its best football season in quite some time, and that overlaps in a season where the Pac-12 is facing some of the most discord it's had in some time. Is the outcome that the season means less than it should, or that they have a chance to really help their conference in a way that they wouldn't have had a chance to before?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I'm never sure how much like any individual season or year-to-year performance really matters in the big picture when it comes to like realignment and media deals and stuff. I think it's kind of a bittersweet season. You know, if you're a West Coast kind of Pac-12 football fan who has watched this conference and these teams for a long time, like knowing that this is the last year that USC and UCLA are going to be in the same league with all these schools that they've been in the same league with, you know, seemingly forever and ever. So I think it's a good year to kind of just enjoy the 12 Saturdays, you know, and cheer for your team and, you know, hope that this last year of the actual Pac-12, you know, such as it is right now, maybe produces a playoff contender or a couple playoff contenders, or, you know, has people thinking maybe, like you said, a little bit differently about the league. That, you know, I guess at the end of the day, like if you're a Pac-12 follower and you really care about the league and the conference, you want someone who's not USC or UCLA to win it this year, right? You want someone who's not USC or UCLA to break through and break the league's playoff drought, which obviously no team's been to the CFP since Washington in 2016. So, you know, it's kind of going to be another really good year for quarterbacks with Michael Penix Jr. coming back. Obviously, Caleb Williams is back at USC. Bo Nix is back at Oregon. We'll see what DJ Uiagalelei can get done with Jonathan Smith kind of getting a fresh start at Oregon State. So a lot of fun quarterbacks, some fun teams. I think it's a good year to kind of just set the realignment stuff aside. You got one more year with these 12 teams and try to enjoy it.
Christian, for a lot of people, Michael Penix came out of nowhere for UW, right? But if you were, I guess, if you follow football closely, you'd realize, man, he had some game over there with Indiana, just couldn't really get right to stay healthy. With college football, you can scheme up so much, but it's more about personnel, right? You just got bigger dogs, better dogs. You're probably going to win the ball game no matter what the opposition does when it comes to scheme. My question is, how likely is it that Michael Penix can repeat the performance he had last year? Because you're right, with UCLA leaving, with USC leaving, I mean, I love me some Caleb Williams, but I'm like, we need somebody else to kind of lead the charge when it comes to quarterback playing the conference, particularly a guy who's going to stay here. So when it comes to Michael Penix, how likely is it that he can repeat that performance? Because he does have a lot of his guys coming back.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the personnel, and you start there, and I think there's, you know, one area where you know what you've got, and another area where it's kind of TBD. So obviously, Rome Odunze, Jalen McMillan, Jalen Polk, every other receiver who kind of passed for them last year is back. And then speaking of transfers, I mean, Jeremy Bernard from Michigan State is stepping in. And so in terms of targets and having his guys, yeah, it's, you know, exactly what you're getting from every guy who's stepping out there at receiver and tight end. But they only allowed 7 sacks last year as an offensive line, and had 3 seniors who have moved on, both guards and their center. So I think that's really the key for, can this offense be either as efficient and explosive as it was last year, or more efficient, more explosive than it was last year? It's, are they going to be able to protect Michael Penix Jr. as good as they did last season? You know, I don't know that any offense can reasonably go into a year saying, okay, the standard is 7 sacks in 13 games, because that's, you know, that's pretty amazing protection. There were only 2 Power 5 teams last year, or excuse me, 2 teams in all of FBS last year who allowed fewer sacks than that. So that might be kind of a once every blue moon type of deal, but I think they feel pretty good about, you know, some of those guys trying to step in on the offensive line. Nate Kalepo, the guy who's been in the program this will be his 5th year now, and kind of played both guard spots. I think everyone expects him to sort of take over at one of those. Mateo Mele is a 6th-year senior who's probably going to step in at center, who hasn't ever had a chance to really be a starter, but he's played a lot as a reserve, and a couple other younger guys at the other guard spot that they're kind of encouraged by. So, they won't have nearly as much starting experience on this offensive line. I think maybe it'll take a little bit for those guys to gel together, but I think that's really where it starts. If they can protect Michael Penix Jr., even in the ballpark as well as they did last year, then all the other pieces are in place, I think, for him to have another really big year.
Now, I want to keep talking about Husky football, and you are a must-read football reporter, which is why I can already see that people are very excited to hear that your coverage is also going to be available on seattlesports.com. But given that it's March Madness, we're having basketball talk this morning, and there's plenty to discuss following UW's men's hoops program, at least. Were you surprised to see that Hopkins was staying?
I wasn't. I think the finances of it kind of made that inevitable in some ways. They would have owed him $6.3 million over the next couple of years. If they had made a change this year, of course, that'd be offset by any new money he'd get at a new job. So it probably would end up being less than that, but that's what you're committing to paying if you make a change, and just where they're at financially, and with it being men's basketball and not football, the math and the calculus is a little bit different. So I think, look, he was a 2-time Pac-12 Coach of the Year his first 2 years at Washington. He hasn't been able to replicate that with guys that he recruited and rosters that he's constructed himself. So that's kind of the question. Another sort of mediocre finish. How many of these guys are going to come back? What are they going to be able to do in the transfer portal to fill some of the holes, and especially kind of remake that offense like he's talked about. So I was not particularly surprised. I think it's just kind of a weird spot for them to be in with the way that the numbers work out with his contract.
So we had North Carolina basketball, right? They said, no, we're not going to the NIT. We're too good for that. But the Lady Huskies are in the women's NIT. They beat New Mexico 67-56. I don't know if they call it the Elite Eight in the NIT, but 8 teams left in the NIT. What are the chances that these ladies pull it off?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a nice bounce back year for them. That's another program too that was pretty consistently successful under June Doherty. They made a change, when I was in school, which I think was a little bit surprising, parting ways with her. And then, it took them a while to get to Mike Neighbors. And, obviously everyone knows what Kelsey Plum did and getting them to the Final Four and kind of putting that program on the map. But, that's an example of making the right hire and, the right coach really turning things around. This is Tina Langley's second year, and they beat Stanford this season. That was a huge step forward, and they got back to the postseason. So I know they've got a number of players who are contributors, big-time contributors on that. I think 5 of their 6 leading scorers this year, 5 of their top 6 scorers this year have eligibility left, and got a pretty exciting recruiting class too. So it does seem like the arrow's pointing up for them for sure.
All right, last question here with you, Christian. Again, you've got work available at onmontlake.com. Make sure you guys go subscribe to that. Also, seattlesports.com, where Christian is going to be our Huskies insider. What are you working on right now for either site? What can you tell us about what's next?
Yeah, so I think a little bit later today, subscribers at onmontlake.com can expect a story. I'm kind of looking at the ratio of what Washington is paying Kalen DeBoer relative to what they're paying their assistant coaching staff, and how that kind of ranks nationally. So I kind of had a suspicion that the percentage of, if you take all 11 of those coaches together, their 10 assistants plus their head coach, the percentage of the money that's going to the head coach, I think, is a lot lower than it is at a lot of other big-time programs, which is maybe an indication of just how much they value sort of being able to pay the whole staff and put together a really competitive, whole 10 assistant coaching staff. So I'm kind of interested to dive into the numbers on that.
Very, very cool. All right, you guys, Christian is going to cover UW all year long. He's going to have 2 columns per week on seattlesports.com. And then there's going to be select unlocked content from onmontlake.com, which is his subscription website and newsletters that features in-depth coverage of the Huskies. He's also going to be a regular guest on Seattle Sports Radio programs, including, obviously, Washington Wednesday during the college football season. Christian, thank you so much for not just for joining us today, but for joining Seattle Sports. And we're really excited to talk to you this year.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Christian.